and welcome to the SuccessionFit podcast. I am your host, Tom Hine. I'm very excited to introduce today's guest, Carolyn Armitage. Carolyn is the head of Thrivent Advisor Network and has over 30 years of experience in the wealth management industry. Carolyn is going to talk to us about the trends in the financial planning and wealth management field and succession and continuity planning. These are, as all the listeners know, these are near and dear to my heart. So welcome, Carolyn.
Thank you, Tom. I'm honored and appreciate our strategic partnership over the years and love sharing the wisdom that I've learned over the years from so many to help others thrive.
Excellent.
Delighted to be here.
Excellent. I can't wait to dig in because for those listeners that didn't know, I also was able to interview her for my last book, and she shared, as always, some really cutting edge, important information in the valuation, succession, continuity space. So with that, let's just kind of bring it up to speed, Carolyn. Tell us about your current role at Thrivent Advisor Network.
Yeah, thank you. My entire career has been spent in the independent wealth management space, either being a financial advisor and running a firm. I've been an operator for numerous firms in the industry, and I've also done investment banking and consulting work for many of the large wealth management firms. And this last year, I took a terrific opportunity to help build out a startup RIA for Thrivent, as they have committed to evolve their business model, and they have expanded into the independent wealth management space. So we created an organization called Thrivent Advisor Network, or TAN, as it's affectionately called. And we believe humanity thrives when people make the most of all that they've been given. We help people achieve financial clarity, enabling lives full of meaning and gratitude. And so our financial advisors have a bond that goes far beyond financial gains. They kind of call it success with significance. We presently have 26 offices throughout the country, a little over 200 financial advisors, and are looking to grow through recruiting as well as acquisitions. In fact, just today, I received a signature on a indication of interest that we have out there for a firm that we're looking to buy and add in this summer. So it's very exciting times for us.
Excellent, excellent. So on that theme, can you share with us today then, what are some of the themes that you see playing out, in both the advisor role that you're working on and in terms of the succession or continuity or acquisition space, like knowing that you're in the middle of it right now, and especially any themes that might have changed, since the pandemic started?
Yeah, it's a terrific question, and that's why I feel this issue of succession planning as well as contingent planning, because of COVID, is so front and center on many minds in our space. We've been seeing over the last 5 years or so, the original founders of the independent wealth management space, those that were pioneers. They left wirehouses because they wanted a more pure opportunity to be that fiduciary, to be on the same side of the table with clients. Those folks are now retiring. And so as they're faced with the choice of how do they exit with an internal sale or an external sale, I've kind of coined this as the founder's dilemma. That do they ensure the continuity of their business by sharing equity with their key employees who help them grow the business over the years? Or do they try to get as much as they can by selling to an outside buyer, where it's less emotional dealing with the negotiations of who that partner is and what the financial elements are, versus selling internally? And these conflicted sentiments often thwart the founders' efforts because it's such an internal conflict. It oftentimes just holds them back from doing anything.
And over that time, and I've seen the same thing, by the way, I've seen on the side where the owner can't leave the business, can't walk away. And in the book, I mentioned the phrase, many of them mostly men, but many of them die with their boots on, is the expression. So do you think that they're caught between they don't want to necessarily make the biggest grab, the biggest pile of money? Or do you think maybe some of them, never having been through this before, almost like need a coach, to walk them through the steps that they're going to see along the way? Because for them, it's the first time often.
Yes, most advisors only have the opportunity to sell their firm once. Occasionally it happens where it gets sold a couple of times, and they may be able to participate in some of those structures if they kept some of the equity around and they sell to a private equity firm that has the financial intent to turn that every 4, 5, 6 years. But most advisors only do this once. And it is a emotionally very difficult conversation for them to have with themselves first, and then to say it out loud and have with others. The financial aspects can be quite complicated as well. I have found, though, that if they have good counsel, the financial element is far easier than the emotional aspect of going through the deal.
Right. It makes sense. And I heard on a different podcast recently, I heard someone mention that most of the sellers, and this is, I know, oversimplifying it, but most of the sellers are looking for a few key items. They want the check to clear, they want their clients taken care of, they want their staff and team taken care of, and they want flexibility in the deal structure.
Yeah, that's a pretty fair assessment, although I would say, number one, I should hope that an advisor doesn't have to worry about the check clearing, because one should perhaps question the long-term viability of an organization where the check may not clear. That's super concerning. From my consulting and investment banking work prior to coming to the Thrivent Advisor Network, definitely the number one, I would say, out of 100 financial advisors, like 98% of them, their number one concern over the check is, I want my clients to be well taken care of. Tom, when you think about financial advisors and what they've been through, whether it's been a 20, 30, 40-year career for them, they've been through births and deaths, marriages, divorces, children, grandchildren, floods, earthquakes, fires, you name it, right? Like, they have been there through thick and thin, holding their client's hand. And it is a very connected service business where very few advisors are willing to sell out, so to speak, simply to get the highest deal structure for themselves. Most of them really want to make sure their clients are well taken care of, even before themselves.
Yes, I think you're so right. And yeah, just circling back, I should have said it was tongue in cheek, but yes, on the check to clear, I guess my point there was, I have seen this with firms of the medium size that are worried about, how big is the person buying me? And they say, the bigger the firm, the better. They get a comfort zone. But you and I know bigger isn't always better, because some big firms don't execute well on the strategy and some smaller firms execute very well. But it's a valid point. 98% want their clients taken care of. And those are the good advisors, the ones you want to do business with. So is there anything else that you see in terms of any other big disruptions in the financial planning field right now? Things, whether it becomes like obviously the private equity firms and the cheap money, that's one disruptor. Anything else you would want to comment on? And it can either be a positive disruptor or it could be a negative disruptor in some cases, but I'll let you choose which one you'd want to comment on.
Yeah, thank you. I see disruptors as being both positive and negative. And I think it's how firms implement some of the changes over the longer term. The major theme that I would say here is the professionalization of the wealth management space. So what I mean by that is the founders of our independent space were oftentimes sole proprietors, some even working out of their basement or their garage or a side den in their home. And then as they gained more confidence. They set up shop somewhere and hired a receptionist and some operations folks, and other advisors joined with them to share overhead and such. But it wasn't until the last, call it about 5 years, where we saw from a mass scale the consolidation of these smaller and mid-market firms, whereby professional teams come in to manage the organization, freeing up time and resources for the financial advisors to do what they love to do and what they're best at, and that's working with the clients, servicing the clients, and bringing in more clients. And so that's what I mean by the professionalization of having this full-time executive management team throughout the industry. I think all the rest of the components, like robo-advisors, for example, while those could be called a disruptor, I don't see that as anything vastly different than, say, the no-load fund proliferation that we had a couple decades ago, where some of the commission-based folks were concerned that that would dramatically impact their long-term viability. And it definitely didn't. In fact, I think it made more clear the value that financial advisors provide versus the self-help model. I see the enablement of putting tools online for those that want to DIY it, they can. Then when they want assistance, they can also have assistance with financial advisors. And frankly, for the advisor out there in the industry, most of them have gone up market, whereby they welcome these robo tools to help them manage the smaller accounts, which, it can be cost prohibitive to do so on a customized basis that they may manage a high net worth client's portfolio, for example.
Yeah.
So I think those are all positives. The robo advisors are just really helpful for the efficiency of organizations. I think it's such a change up from this cottage industry that we started with to have the professionalization come in, and though that should have long, far-reaching implications for how we do business in the
Yes. And I think your answer, yes, spot on about the robo advisors. I know our broker dealer came out with basically a robo account for that reason, for the smaller accounts that you want to take care of for client situations where it's below a minimum. They rolled out their own a few years ago, and it's been, like you said, a great tool in the toolbox for that. So speaking of advisors and asset gathering, what do you think will be the future effect of the pandemic on savings, investments, and more critically, I think, investor behavior? I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think advisors and clients alike have had the opportunity to take a look and kind of assess what really matters to them. Mm-hmm. And we have seen a shift both in advisor behavior as well as client behavior into really moving into that space and shifting how they spend their money, how they invest their money, making sure that their values are aligned with that spend. And so I think it's been a terrific time over the last couple of years to really kind of take inventory of what and how you've been doing things. And it's a terrific opportunity to make changes or improvements and really set themselves and their business up to build a lasting legacy. After all, our reputation precedes us in this business. And, that's the one element that I see advisors really having a lot of intention with, is when they look for a succession partner, they want to have confidence when they see their client out in their local communities in the future, that they're not embarrassed that they just took a check for the largest amount or sold out, so to speak, at the cost of their client's services. It's just too personal of an investment service that advisors offer. So I love to see a little more balance coming into our industry as opposed to simply looking at it from a financial sale or transaction, because it is really about the relationships.
Yes, and indeed, this is a shameless plug for my next book, but the one book I'm working on, let you know, I'm under sort of double secret probation, not to, release the title, but letting you know the next book for me, which is going to be important, is about how we view our client relationships and can we help them more than just the money aspect, but with health and wellness. So stay tuned, but I'm excited because you're right. It's such a personal business that I've looked at this in a whole different view based on my 35 years of martial arts and all the yoga that I do. I say, is there more that we can do from our clients? So thanks for getting my thinking going on that one. Go
Tom,
ahead.
go on. May I interject something there? Because before I came to TAN, I was doing business consulting and investment banking, and I would get about a call a week from financial advisors who were seemingly outwardly very successful. And yet, in their heart of hearts, they had lost the joy. The business was no fun anymore. They were literally getting crushed under the weight of their own success.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it was really profound, whereby advisors had been so successful. We've had such a long, expansive market. They've had so much success that once you hit like that first 500 million in assets, challenging to build, a lot of joy in the build, fairly manageable, and you can add on team members in a fairly moderate pace. The next 500 million to $1 billion is really challenging. This is where firms have to really invest in technology and human capital, or getting the right people, expensive people, on their team in a very competitive employee market right now. And it takes a lot of investment. Back when I was at Echelon, we called it the Valley of Doom. And so a lot of advisors in that $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 million space really want to get back to simpler times doing what they love to do. They didn't get in the business to manage people. That becomes kind of a headache. They didn't get in the business because they wanted to spend time working on regulatory changes and a tech stack and having to negotiate with all these vendors. And now you have to worry about cybersecurity and attacks. And it becomes a lot of administration, and it really can deplete the joy and take away from that client face time. So we are seeing more advisors wanting to sell and stay. They sell the firm, they keep working perhaps for 5 years or more in a more suitable function, oftentimes client sales and servicing, instead of having to do everything themselves. And that frees up so much space in their mind and their heart to really enjoy and sunset their career the way they want to.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I didn't know that, but that is exactly, ironically, why I was motivated to write the next book. So thank you. And I'll circle back with you, privately on this as I get more information, but it's fascinating. So what do you think then, other than the advisors that you've connected with yourself, over the years, the current ones at Thrivent and your great work at Echelon, why do you think advisors usually, and I say the word usually, wait too long, to complete a succession or continuity plan, or why do they delay? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's sometimes it can be just paralysis from analysis. There's so many different places an advisor can turn to for assistance. It can be costly, it can be confusing, and they just don't know exactly what to do. So for example, that founder's dilemma that I mentioned, oftentimes a senior advisor is faced with, do they want to forego current earnings, their profits, to hire a financial advisor that they then need to spend time and either teach them the business or help groom them in their style, their fashion. So that takes money out of their pocket year over year, as well as it takes some value out of the firm if they were to sell, or a contingent happened immediately, right? So if you decrease
Yep.
the firm profit, say by $100,000, if your firm was worth 8 times, that means you just lost $800,000 in value for the organization. So it's a financial aspect, but it's also that time and grooming, and oftentimes the founder of the firm feels that the young whippersnapper coming in does things differently. They don't do things the same way that I did as a founder, right? And that has some uncomfort associated with it. And oftentimes, the founder doesn't feel like the successor's ready. And also, interestingly, I don't know if you're aware of this, but really finding that sometimes the G2 advisor that the founder thought would step up has no desire to sign a personal guarantee to buy the firm, or their spouse said, oh no way. We are not going to sign our house away to buy this organization. Really finding a lot of those G2 advisors not willing to step up, and they would instead prefer to be a servicing advisor.
Wow. Now, that's the short answer is I'd heard of it, but not to the extent that you're describing it. So thanks for sharing with me and our listeners. I was not aware of it. And this may be a cultural shift because, you mentioned the G2. I'll just share with you, I had a meeting with one of my attorneys who's helping me find a patent lawyer, for some intellectual property that I'm working on for this next project. And he said something interesting happening in his law firm, which was, he said, we noticed that the younger associates, unlike, let's say, the younger associates of 20 years ago, he thought correctly, by the way, but he's saying, I thought the younger associates correctly, they wanted to have more family time at home, spend more time at dinners, spend more time with the children's activities, as opposed to going out and being on the boards of all these different companies, thereby prospecting, right, meeting new client referrals. And what he noted was the older partners, the senior ones, were like, hey, how are we going to get bought out if the newer generation of associates, right, isn't grooming the next generation of clients? So you see where that challenge is. On the one hand, it's good for the families of those legal associates, but it may not be great for the law firm if they can't create the revenue structure to buy out the senior partners. I thought it was a fascinating lunchtime conversation I had, recently.
Yeah, and that has many of the same implications in the financial services industry as well.
Exactly. That's what I thought. So excellent. So if you were to look forward, let's say 5 years from today, what do you think the financial planning or wealth management field would look like? What trends do you see establishing themselves? Do you think consolidation happens forever, or do we slow down with the consolidation? I'm curious where you see, if you were to make those bold guesses or predictions, what things look like in the future.
Yeah, I think what we've seen over the last few years, that trend is going to accelerate. And what I mean by that is kind of a barbelling of our industry. So I think there's a place in wealth management for boutique firms that are truly customized, specialized, and add a high level of personal touch that's valued in the marketplace. And then there's definitely space for the institutionalized firms that could provide mass scale and appeal. You could really liken it to like a coffee shop, a local community coffee shop versus Starbucks, right? Sometimes people want Starbucks, even though their beans may be a little bit oily. I'm a coffee snob personally myself, but they are very, very consistent. And so there's good brand value in that consistency.
Yeah.
Because you know what to expect. Although you can have better flavor, a more interesting experience and cultural experience by going to a boutique coffee shop. And yet there's room for both. Yeah,
no, I think that's a brilliant analogy. And in the end, it's true, especially I find when I'm on vacation, wherever you are, whether it's domestically or, travel to the islands or something. I think we all, especially on that, want to find something new like that boutique coffee shop where you're like, wow, this is the only one on the island, the only one in this area. And it's always got some funky design,
Yeah.
some great music. And you're right, the experience is like nothing you'll get anywhere else. And yet you're okay with it because that's your expectation, when you go in there. So that's a great analogy. Love that. So I want to circle back a little bit to when, if you remember my interview with you a couple years ago, there were 3 takeaways from my interview with you in the book, which was the Zen of Business Acquisitions. This was done in 2019. And imagine you and I could not have known, Carolyn, how the world was going to change just a few years later, right? Stunning.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to go back because I thought back then they were so right on. I just want you to comment if anything has changed on the following. I'll kind of read them back to you. I'm sure you know them well, but one was know where you and your firm stand or fit into this M&A landscape. Are you a practice, a boutique, or a business? And then know the psychology of the seller. That's if you're a buyer, and vice versa. This will save you time and aggravation. And know that valuation only has meaning in context. The valuation will change over time. So I'd love to hear your comments if those are still true, if anything has changed from that time a couple years ago.
Yeah, thank you. So I think I commented about the barbell approach. I think that is becoming even more extreme. The firms that are in the middle, right? So TAN is just a couple years old. We've got $6.5 billion in assets under management, a very robust parent company with $126 billion in surplus that we can afford to compete with the large private equity firms that do, dozens of deals a year. Really hard for a firm that is even $1 billion to be able to compete with the private equity money that's out there because their multiples are so much larger than theirs. Mm-hmm. There is multiple arbitrage that they can share with the seller. There's synergy value that's realized through these acquisitions that they can share with the seller. And that just isn't true of smaller firms. So we definitely see more of the larger players being able to win more of the deals because they have fully dedicated M&A teams and onboarding teams that they can just outperform those that are trying to do it kind of casually on the side with maybe one dedicated resource. Mm-hmm. It's hard to match those professional resources.
Yes, it is. However, I have heard stories, and I'm sure you have too, of where some of the big aggregators have a great marketing plan. They certainly have, they check all the right boxes, and yet having had friends or connections in the industry join, again, some, not all, but some of these aggregators and find out that there was a little bit of, occasionally some snake oil salesmen going on there, right? I mean, again, I'm not going to mention any names, but we don't think that we know that bigger isn't always better. Have you seen that happen on occasion, whether it was at Echelon or today, where people thought they were getting one thing and then may have been sort of offered something else when reality hit? I'm curious if you've seen that.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked this question, Tom. It's one of the reasons I am here at TAN is I've been on all sides of the private equity deals, and it's sometimes the end results kind of hurt my heart. Mm-hmm. And I am more about fulfillment. I think we are blessed to be in an industry where we have such amazing financial rewards at every level, right? Mm-hmm. From being a financial advisor, being an owner, certainly, that's there on the private equity side. But the intrinsic rewards that we get out of helping clients each and every day is so meaningful. And so that is one of the elements that I'm very cautious on for folks in the industry is what their legacy will be. At TAN, we're really building something special, and it's, quite frankly, not for everyone. I think there's a real dramatic distinction in our industry for when advisors choose who their successor is. And I've always felt that the financial advisor, it's a very special business and it's kind of a calling for individuals,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not, I haven't heard any financial advisors that said they got into this business because they wanted to make a bunch of money. It's because they want to help and serve people.
Yes, yes.
And so as they're looking at what do they want to be remembered for when they exit the business, what is going to be their legacy, I am hoping for the most for our industry, and that the advisors will kind of send that elevator back down and help those, whether it's allowing them to purchase the organization or just financially sharing out, kind of tipping out, if you will, as they sell their firm to those that really helped them succeed along the way. You know, there are several deals that we were a part of that we, you know, sometimes the seller wanted the purchaser to pay out the employees and not take it out of their own pocket when it really needs to come out of the seller's pocket, if you will, the deal structure.
Mm-hmm.
At TAN, we have a 120-year foundation through Thrivent, and we have the luxury to build out this new independent RIA platform for the next 100 years. And that gives us a lot of ability to provide a robust deal structure for financial advisors that they can feel good about who they're leaving their clients' hands in. Because we don't intend just to take care of the clients through the current generation. We're looking at this for generations to come and to be able to take full care of the family for their entire future generations and the advisor's legacy.
Wow, that's so powerful. And I feel the same, you know, with our firm and what we're looking to do. So on that note, I'm going to summarize all the great ideas that you've shared with us, Carolyn. And this is amazing because sometimes we do save the best for last, you know, as you just covered. So a few things. We know that Thrivent and TAN, as you call it, right, believes in success with significance. So I think that's really important that you've got that meaningful line behind what you do. We talked about the founder's dilemma. You know, do you sell out to the highest bidder or work with G2? We work with that, your quote, 98% of advisors have one concern: are my clients going to be well taken care of? And I think that's such a great tribute to our industry, as well as the people who work hard, you know, to make those promises happen. We talked about the professionalization of the wealth management space. I would have used the word systemization, but I like your word better, the professionalization, which is true because it really was, for many years, this sort of mom and pop businesses all around the country, really working hard, having those client relationships. And then one day you turn around and you got 3, 4, 500 million under management, and it's really not a mom and pop business anymore. You know, it's an entity. So that's interesting. And then we talked about the valley of doom that I didn't know about, that you expressed you had witnessed some advisors who really need that help of a bigger partner to step in and let them do the things that they most enjoyed when they were building, you know, this wealth management practice. So the valley of doom was something new. And then I love the analogy about the Starbucks versus the boutique, you know, coffee shop. One gentleman in the book mentioned to me too. He said, you know, you can't franchise fine French restaurants, right? I love that idea. So his opinion, like yours, was there's still room for the fine French restaurants at one end, and there's still room, you know, for the Capital Grills or their larger, you know, restaurateurs who have a game plan and they're able to systematize around the country. There's room for both as well. So with that, I would like to thank you, Carolyn, ask you if you have any other parting words you want for the TAN network. I'll give you a chance here, and how people can get a hold of you if they need to contact you. Go right ahead and share with our listeners.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. So I would, you know, kind of conclude with saying life is short, right? We saw how quickly things can change kind of overnight. And so enjoying the journey, I think, is so much more important than trying to control every element of your life. My husband and I, for example, we're buying a yacht to do a little pre-retirement enjoyment, not waiting until we retire. I would say that we, being TAN, believe that advisors can really thrive with purpose when they have access to the tools and resources that let them focus on what they love to do, that they feel better about what they're doing when they're connected to a community and kind of have that shared calling to make a positive impact on the world, and the freedom to control the client experience, the operating model, and how they want to define their legacy. And at TAN, we can offer all of that. So I would welcome anybody who would like to have a confidential conversation to feel free to reach out to me. My email's rather long, so if you want to look me up on LinkedIn, look up Carolyn Armitage at Thrivent Advisor Network, and I'll be happy to connect with you there and have a confidential conversation.
Great. Well, thank you, Carolyn. And again, once again, not surprised, you had great wisdom to share, as you did last time, when you helped me with that chapter in the book. So until next time, thank you for joining me, Tom Hine, on the SuccessionFit podcast. And we all look forward to sharing new and exciting ideas with you. Thanks again.